What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to College Football Talk with Peter Burtnett, bringing you the final episode in a series on the games that I'm most looking forward to, especially the top five in each of the conferences. And in today's video, I'm going to be talking about the top five games in the non-conference schedule. Most of these games are in the earlier stretch of the season, those first three or 4 weeks before conference play starts. But there is one that stands out that'll come later in the season. But before I get in this video, if you're going to enjoy, please feel free to leave a like, consider subscribing to the channel, and turn on those post notifications so you're always up to date whenever I post. But without further ado, let's dive into it. And I'm going to start out with some honorable mentions. One game that is interesting to me because some people are tabbing the visiting team in this game to be a contender for making the college football playoff as one of those group of five. Boise State at Oregon on September 7th is, I think, an interesting game. I think Oregon should win comfortably, but you never know with Boise State. They've been known to pull off an upset before, and I think this could at the very least, be an entertaining game. Another one to watch, Alabama at Wisconsin on September 14th. I think this one is interesting because Alabama does lose a lot of production. They obviously lose head coach Nick Saban, and so they would be expected to maybe take a slight step back, and I could think that could make for a very competitive game at Camp Randall as Luke Fickell kind of continues to grow into the Badgers program and heads into his second year there in Madison. So I think that's another interesting game to watch. And then I'm kind of split on this one. It's almost like a 5A and a 5B. If I had to pick between these two games, honestly, they're very, very interchangeable. The two that I'm kind of considering for this number 5 spot of the games to watch in non-conference play is Arizona at Kansas State. And when I go over these teams, I'm going to be using the final rankings that they had in the AP poll to end the 2023 season. Obviously, it's possible that they drop out. A team like Arizona, who loses head coach Jedd Fisch, but they're also, I've talked about it before, they're bringing back their starting quarterback and their leading wide receiver. So I think the Wildcats are still in contention, and obviously they're going up against the Kansas State Wildcats in this game, who also lose a lot, especially, namely quarterback Will Howard. But I think Chris Kleeman has the Wildcats in Manhattan, kind of making strides. 2 years ago, the Big 12 champions had a solid 9-win season this past year, so they're certainly not going away. I think this is an entertaining game to watch. But what I think I am going to put in this 5 spot is North Carolina State against Tennessee in Charlotte. I think both of these two teams are those teams that are kind of on the outside where they really aren't being tabbed by many analysts or writers as being real favorites to even make the 12-team playoff. But I think they're two teams that are kind of on the outside looking in. I think the Wolfpack, they finished the season ranked 21st. I think in the ACC, if they're able to, and I've looked at their schedule previously, I'm trying to remember if they play Florida State or Clemson, but I think they have a fairly manageable schedule. If they can just, avoid losses, those losses in games that they should win, I think they'll be in a strong position. And if they're able to beat the Volunteers in Charlotte, I think they'd pick up a resume-boosting win as well. And then for those Volunteers, they finished the 2023 season ranked 17th, and I think that Josh Heupel has the Volunteers in a really good position to potentially make some noise. And I think they maybe have an opportunity where Alabama, again, is kind of expected to maybe take a step back. That's a game in SEC play that I didn't include in my top 5 games, but I'd have to maybe consider the third Saturday in October between the Crimson Tide and the Volunteers. But this game to kick off week 2 of the season in Charlotte on September 7th will be a game to watch. Coming in at number 4, this game a couple of years ago would have ranked a lot higher. It's a little bit lower because one of the teams is a little bit down to where they had been, but that is Clemson against Georgia in Atlanta. That one is week 1 on August 31st. Clemson finished the season ranked 20th, Georgia number 4. Obviously, the Bulldogs were disappointed by not being able to make the playoff and defend their back-to-back national titles, but I think they're probably the favorite or among, the top 2 or 3 favorites to win the national championship this year. And so this is a game where I would imagine the Bulldogs cruise, but who knows? Dabo Swinney, faced a lot of criticism this past season, but he still led the Tigers to a 9-win season, to a top 20 finish in the AP poll. And I think if the Tigers can turn things around back to how they had been last year, this would be a key game. And I think it's certainly, again, I think most people would expect that the Bulldogs are able to win this one, but I think it's a game still to keep an eye on because it's, one of the top teams in the ACC against probably the favorite in the SEC and the favorite nationally as well. Coming in at number 3, this game is kind of the disappointment matchup, and it'll be the LSU Tigers against the USC Trojans in Las Vegas, Nevada at Allegiant Stadium, the site of the Super Bowl, in a couple of days on Sunday, September 1st. So this is a game where both teams, going into this past season, USC returned the Heisman Trophy winner, while LSU wound up having the quarterback Jayden Daniels, who would go on to win the Heisman. Both teams now will be without those Heisman Trophy winners, who obviously provided a lot in regards to offense. The favorite, I would imagine, for LSU is Garrett Nussmeier to take over at quarterback, and for USC, very likely to be Miller Moss after the performance he had in the Holiday Bowl against Louisville. But both of these two teams, again, were teams where you have a quarterback, and not just a quarterback, but an offense around those Heisman winning quarterbacks that just, for whatever reason, didn't always deliver in terms of winning games. And a lot of times, especially at USC, were kind of hamstrung by really weak defenses. So this is something where these two teams will look to start the 2024 season off on the right foot. I think they should be both fairly evenly matched. Both are really good at passing the football. LSU has typically a pretty good secondary. They're definitely among the teams in the country that have right to claim DBU. But this is a game where, again, you've got two teams that were disappointing in 2023, two teams with coaches who recently joined the programs in the last several years, Lincoln Riley at USC and Brian Kelly at LSU, where the winner of this game positions themselves well to be in contention for the 12-team playoff. I imagine both of these teams probably finish the regular season with two or three losses. So this is a game where, if you lose this one, there's obviously, an opportunity to turn things around after, but it kind of puts yourselves in a little bit of a hole, especially because both of these teams play in the two toughest conferences in college football. And I think for USC especially has a really tough slate after this game. So that's my number 3 game. Very close in coming in at number 2 is Florida State at Notre Dame. And this is the one that comes later in the season, not till November 9th. The number 6 Seminoles obviously left out of the playoff. They are losing a lot, as was evidenced in that beatdown by Georgia in the Orange Bowl. And Notre Dame, another year, kind of another high expectations, kind of lose the big games and kind of, sputter to a solid, I think it was 10-win season this past year, but they finished the season, the Fighting Irish, at number 14. So this one, there's a lot of history in this matchup. These teams have competed for national championships throughout their histories a few times. You've had some classic 1 versus 2 matchups in this series before, and there's just a lot of history. And so that'll definitely draw some eyeballs. This is a matchup where, this is one that really I think will have major college football playoff implications. It's possible both of these teams are kind of solidified in kind of the middle of that top 10 or maybe even a little bit higher, where even if you lose this game, you might not be done. But this is a big game. I think especially for Florida State, because I think Notre Dame in 2024 has a pretty manageable schedule, and I think they could probably afford to lose this game and still finish the season with maybe even just the one loss or maybe one other loss, and they're probably in the playoff then with 1 or 2 losses. For Florida State, they have a little bit more, of a tenuous road, but this is a big game, and I think it's one to look forward to. But it is not quite the big game to look forward to. I think coming in at number one is the Texas Longhorns at the Michigan Wolverines in the final 2023 AP poll, the number 3 team in the country versus the number 1 national champion. And this game would be taking place at the Big House on September 7th. The Longhorns are returning 70% of their production from this past season. They're losing a lot. They're losing, some of their top receivers. But I think the big thing for the Longhorns is the fact that quarterback Quinn Ewers will be coming back for the 2024 season. For the Wolverines, it's kind of the opposite. I think they have something like only 30, 35, 36% of production returning in 2024. Obviously lose head coach Jim Harbaugh, quarterback J.J. McCarthy, running back Blake Corum, a lot of guys on the defensive side of the ball. But they do have good production returning on the defensive side of the ball. So, on offense, I think Michigan will definitely be a new-look team, but Donovan Edwards coming back at running back will be big. And on the defensive end, I think they have a really good secondary coming back, especially led by Will Johnson and Keon Sabb. So this is the matchup to watch, though. Both of these teams are likely to be, I would say, probably both in the top 5 in the 2024 preseason poll. So very likely to be a top 5 matchup at the Big House early in the season. And certainly will be a lot of eyeballs in this game. A lot of history between both programs, 2 of the most decorated in college football history. And it'll be interesting to see how, who comes out on top in this one. Both teams after this one, obviously Texas joining the SEC and Michigan in a much more loaded Big Ten will face tough schedules. Both teams face, a lot of losses from the past year, but I don't think it's really any different than the other team. But that's my number one game to watch in non-conference play. I'm really excited for that one on September 7th. And obviously it's a long way away. As I'm recording this, actually, the game is what it'd be 7 months away. 7 months away, I think, yesterday. So not too far away. We still have a ways to go, but I love doing these sort of videos as we kind of go through this off season. And I'll have more videos to come. I have one maybe coming on some of the greatest what ifs. I'm reading a book called Upon Further Review, so I'll have more on that with some of the greatest what if moments in college football history. But let me know your thoughts in the comments below on which games you are most looking forward to in non-conference play. Let me know if you thought I got this order right, if there's any games that I left out, either of the honorable mentions or my top 5 that you're most looking forward to that you think have the biggest stakes involved. But again, if you've watched to this point in the video, thank you so much for taking the time to watch College Football Talk. I'm your host, Peter Burnett, signing out. Peace.